There's a major crisis facing healthcare facilities management. We have aging employees, aging buildings, and aging infrastructure. We've created the Healthcare Facilities Network, a content network designed specifically to help solve for these three pressing issues in healthcare facilities management. We bring on thought leaders and experts from across healthcare facilities management, all the way from the C-suite to the technician level, because at the end of the day, we're all invested in solving the aging issue. Thanks for tuning in. Look at our videos. You will find that as a theme across our content. This is the Healthcare Facilities Network. I'm your host, Peter Martin.
I thank you for joining, and I'm happy and pleased to be joined by a great roundtable today. We recorded in June of 2023, and it was published in July of 2023, so coming up on 2 years. We called it Generations in Healthcare Facilities Management, and the gang is all back together again today. I thank them for returning. I appreciate it. I appreciate their time. So to start this one, just you guys could introduce yourselves and tell us, what were you in 2023 and what are you now? And we are recording this February 2025. So what's that, 20 months or so? So what were you? What are you? I'm going to start, Logan. We will start with you to my right, and we'll just kind of go around to Logan, Claire, Brittany, and Jim.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to see everyone again. I really appreciate being able to come back on. Some familiar faces. So in June of 2023, I was the Associate Safety Manager at Hospital and University of Pennsylvania with Penn Medicine Health System. A little bit of change of pace, a couple different roles, and 20 months later, and now I am the Regulatory Compliance Manager for Hospital University of Pennsylvania and Penn Medicine with their physical plant department. In between there, I had a few different change of pace. I had a colleague that left a role at one of our sister entity hospitals. So I was promoted to the safety manager to fill in for that position for roughly 8 to 9 months until a position that I'm currently in opened up here at Hospital University of Penn, short for HUP. So that way I don't continue to read that fully.
Hi, everyone. The timing of this podcast couldn't be more spot on. My name is Claire Salinas. When we spoke last, I was transitioning from an administrative director role at Atrium Health in the Carolinas to the role I'm currently in. I serve as the Director of Customer Success for FSI. We're a healthcare CMMS provider, and I'm actually, over the next few weeks, I will be transitioning out of my role here at FSI. Atrium Health has graciously accepted to take me back. I'll be on their CMMS team on a part-time basis. So since we last spoke, I've gotten married and I recently had a baby. So this role will allow me to have a little more time during the week to spend with him. So excited for those changes in the next few weeks.
Awesome. Thanks for coming back, Claire. Claire and I joked that whenever she comes on, she changes roles. So,
true.
Although I haven't had many roles, but they just coincide with appearing. So congratulations on all of that, Claire. The biggest promotion there is, right? Becoming a parent.
Thank you.
Brittany.
Awesome. Well, my name is Brittany Remick, as you guys all know. I was a construction project lead with Advocate Health. At the time, we were just Advocate Aurora Health based in the Midwest. But it sounds like Claire and I will be working for the same organization very soon. Since the last time we recorded, Advocate Aurora has merged with Atrium Health down in the Southeast. So we are now an enterprise with the Midwest and the Southeast as separate regions. I've also been promoted to Construction Project Manager as of June 24. So we had a number of changes within our team. Where we had a number of people leave our organization. So it created some opportunities for me for promotion. And we ran pretty lean there for a little while. We were short 3 teammates of our 6-person project manager and design manager team. So we ran pretty lean since March. And we just got the last person hired at the beginning of January. So been a rough couple months, but we're finally at the end of it now. But it sounds like Claire and I will probably interact more shortly.
All world, a lot has happened.
Absolutely. Hey, Brittany, you have nice pictures behind you, but the one to the green one, what is that? Bottom, yes.
So I previously worked for an organization called Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, formerly the Rehabilitation Institute of Chicago. And annually they have an event called Art in Motion. So art therapy is not supported by any insurances. So their annual event of Art in Motion is where they sell patient artwork, and the patients are typically there to discuss their own art. And all of the proceeds from the Art in Motion event go towards the art therapy program at Shirley Ryan. So this piece and this piece are both from that event, and I have a number of friends who have bought artwork from that event as well.
Very nice. Nice artwork. Is Lamar well?
Lamar as well. Yes, I've gotten him very much back integrated into the HfN&x fold as well. So he doesn't love this term, but I call him, he's part of the Dead Presidents Society. So my husband's like, you didn't say that to him. I was like, I did. But no, he's been a really key role for me with my presidency and HfN&x now. So since we last recorded, I'm also the president of our local ASHE chapter now. And I'm start my second term. 2025 is my second year of my term. And we've made a lot of strides there as well.
Well, as the current president, you can call him the dead president. Thank you, Brittany. Jim.
Yes. Hello, everyone. So it's lovely to see everybody, and congratulations to everyone on the life promotions as well as the career promotions as well. So I'm Jim Grana, and in 2023, I was working with the Standards Interpretation Group at the Joint Commission, which my job was to act as a liaison between the surveyors and the accredited organization representatives to assist with the survey process and accreditation. And then we also served intermittent roles as faculty, providing education for some of the other parts of the Joint Commission's operations. And I also fielded questions regarding interpretation, questions just from organizations on anything that might not be survey related. So kind of a niche role where I acted as a subject matter expert. It was great because I got to meet thousands of people over the last 3 years in that role. And as well as a lot of the surveyors and the team kind of get an inside feel for the process, because before that I was working in healthcare. I was at Advocate Health. Before that, working as facilities manager and safety manager. So I know all these roles. I did a lot of work with construction as well. So it's great to get to apply all that in kind of a different context. And then very excited to announce that as of January this year, I've transitioned into the field director role for the life safety code surveyors. So I am now managing half of our life safety code surveyor cadre, as we call it. So there's approximately 80 some field surveyors out there, and I'm in charge of half of them. So my job now is to support them in their roles, everything from travel to expenses, and more importantly, the survey process, to ensure that we're providing strong education, operations, and consistency, very importantly, across the survey process for our accredited organizations. So I'll still be acting as a liaison between the organizations and the surveyors, but now just in a more direct operational role. So very excited to jump into that.
Congratulations, Jim. And I was out in Milwaukee this past weekend, and I had breakfast with our mutual friend Corey Myshak, and I told him we were going to be speaking, and he said, "Tell Jim hello." So you are correct, Brittany. You said it is a very small world of healthcare facility professionals. So congrats to all of you. You know, it's interesting when I asked you guys, so I think we started planning this like late in 2024, and little did I know, everybody promoted it, and it's kind of perfect for what we want to do here, right? Because, I went back, as I said, I watched 2023, and a couple of the themes that stood out was, we talked about, work-life balance, but at the very end, one of the questions I asked you guys was, would you recommend this field to other people? And Jim, you were qualified. You qualified your answer a bit, as did you, Logan. And you kind of pegged it specifically to who the person happened to be. Claire and Brittany, you guys were, I'd recommend it. So with that kind of as a basis, Claire, I want to go to you first, only because you were in and then you got out and now you're back in. And I remember when you told me you were getting out, I was very surprised because you were headed up that ladder. And then you stayed in healthcare, but you made that transition. Can you tell us a little bit? Obviously, work-life balance plays a huge, role in the decision-making, but were there other factors that went into returning to Atrium and getting back in the world of facilities working for a hospital?
I would say my role with FSI as Director of Customer Success, kind of like what Jim is saying, I got to work with, hundreds of healthcare facilities professionals, covering topics near and dear to our hearts. So I don't know if I would say I was out. I think I was more adjacent, working in a different industry for sure. In the SaaS software space was a very different experience than in healthcare proper. But a lot of the topics and roles were very familiar to me. All of that being said, I am very excited to return back to Atrium Health. And as I mentioned, for me, one of the biggest drivers behind that is seeking work-life balance. That's where I'm at in this season in life, right? When we last spoke a couple of years ago, I was in a very different season of life. And the one I'm entering now, I'm just so grateful to be able to stay in the industry, working for a wonderful organization. But certainly I'm very grateful and excited to be able to get kind of a different employment experience that meets my needs and my family's needs where we're at right now.
Will you be working remotely?
I will be working remotely, yes. Yeah, I'm located in the Charlotte metro area, and so certainly there's a lot of facilities. So, if somebody needs on-site help, I'm here. Sometimes, there's no replacement for that one-on-one individual interaction, but primarily I will be working remotely.
Nice. Jim, let's go to you next, because... So if you want me to cut this, I certainly will, because we're not live now. But I really
preface.
Again, going back and listening to 2 years ago, just as I said, I never thought Claire would kind of leave the day to day. And with you, I was thinking, I wonder if he jumps back into the facilities world relative, but now obviously still with the Joint Commission with a great promotion. Kind of you seem to be longing it a little bit 18 months ago. You didn't miss the kind of day-to-day working 24/7, 365. But it was a little bit of your thought process, if you don't mind, it's
a perfectly fair question. And that's a fair question. And to be fair with you, a lot of my colleagues kind of ask the same thing, like, why are you doing this? Like, it's because I came out of facilities management, which is that 24/7 grind. There's no such thing as days off, and I'm kind of back in that role now because surveyors are traveling all the time on weekends, and organizations are going to have questions at any given moment. So I kind of jumped back into it. It was a difficult question. I felt like I was getting a little bit removed from the operations part of it. And what I realized is like with almost everything in life, if you don't use it, you kind of lose it in terms of getting comfortable and the habits and all that. And while I have to stress this, I loved my previous role. And there are days already, I can tell you, that I miss just kind of being able to focus on something and really do all the research that I like to do. I also enjoy the kind of the hectic, drop one thing, go do the next thing, and figure out how to get to do it, and being resourceful. And I kind of like being a little bit more involved in the day to day. So when the opportunity arose to apply for the position, my thought was, well, I'm at a point in my life where I have the flexibility. I am married. I don't have any kids. My wife also works full time. We're both like fully working individuals, and realized if there was a point in my life where I could just kind of set myself down and focus on doing a job that's going to demand all my attention all the time, it's now. And I think that it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up because I realized I wanted to make sure I experienced that particular role and being fully integrated into day-to-day operations at a really high level for something that I'm very passionate about, which is regulatory safety compliance and life safety code, and trying to assist people, and not just my organization, but all the organizations that I'll get to work with to try and make these organizations run not only safer, but ideally more efficiently.
Good reason. Not that you need my approval for your reason, but very good. Brittany, you next. We talked a lot about work-life balance when, 18 months ago, you have a young child as well, who I was met at the ASHE annual, was that 2023, right? Out in, or down
San
in San
Antonio.
Antonio.
Yep.
Very cute. How has, though, now you've got a little more responsibility, right? At the manager role, how is that transition? Was that a tough decision for you to make to start that career progression again? Or what was a little bit of that thought process?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate that I work from home, so I was able to keep my daughter at home with us for quite some time. My husband has a job where he's only out of the house a couple hours a day, so we were able to make it work. Eventually, he did go to part time when she got a little more active. So we were fortunate enough to be able to do that. It was oddly really perfectly timed that the people departed from my team and created the position opening, because it happened to coincide exactly with when my daughter started daycare. So my availability, not that I wasn't available full time before, but just my attention was a little bit more focused professionally without having her at home. So it was perfectly timed. She started daycare at 18 months, and then I was promoted 3 months later. So it was very perfectly timed. I've definitely gotten to dive into some larger projects because of my past facilities experience. I was doing a lot of heavily phased active clinic projects. So I've asked to cut my teeth on some bigger things. So I'm currently helping with an outpatient center / surgery center in downtown Chicago right now. So I'm assisting my director on that project as he's transitioned to his director role from a PM role, and he's trying to take that step back. So trying to step in and help on some of those larger scale projects. When we did a site tour of that project, I got very excited seeing the central reprocessing area, and he looked at me and I said, that was my bread and butter. I worked at a level 1 trauma center for 3 years of my career. And I did all of anything related to the operating rooms. They all called me. I said, so I'm very familiar with the higher acuity versus because we work in the non-acute group. I do all non-acute construction. So the ambulatory surgery center is the highest acuity project that I've seen through our team. So he saw my heavy interest in that when we did that site tour and asked me to partner with him as we work through the rest of that project. So it's been a good transition, personally and professionally. My daughter's thriving at daycare. We just had her 30-month checkup, and we are, Claire will understand this one. We're in the process of transitioning her to forward-facing car seat. She's that big now. So she's 2.5, and she's thriving. She's doing great. That's an old picture of her.
Okay, I didn't want to ask that. And it wasn't like I was favoring the other side over that side, but I was like,
No, yeah, she's 2.5 now. She had just turned 1 when we came to San Antonio. We had her birthday party and then went straight to the airport. So she had just turned 1 in San Antonio. She will not be in Columbus this year.
Well, I had, God, you remember how hot San Antonio was? It was unbelievably hot, especially everybody here is from the north. Claire, I know you're down south now, but originally from the north. But speaking of the annual, Jim, I joked with Jim. I sent him an email when he said the role he was taking. I was like, well, now, Jim, when you present at the ASHE annual, you will have standing room only out in the crowd for your presentations. Everybody will be banging to get in. Hopefully, they treat you well.
We'll find out.
That's right. So Columbus in July. Logan, you were actually, in terms of like years in healthcare, I think you're at the lowest on the totem pole for this group. A couple of different positions, still elevating. What's a little bit about the thought process for you, and how do you feel now, kind of 2 years later? More entrenched, or what are your thoughts on the last 20 months for you?
It's interesting you mentioned that. So I'm coming up on my 5 years. March 2020 was when I came into Penn Medicine and Healthcare, and this coming March will be my 5-year benchmark. So I'm very excited for that. And from hearing some of the team members here, Jim in particular, it's interesting because from the last time we spoke, I felt I correlated really well with Jim. A lot of it seems similar. I was going into an associate safety manager role and then became the safety and emergency manager for the other hospital in our system. Got to learn more of the emergency operations perspective. And what I really wanted to focus more on is brush up on my codes and the life safety portion. That was my passion versus being on the emergency management side and still have that work-life balance. So that's really the reason for transitioning. And I thought this would be a really good way for me to also diversify and be included in all aspects rather than just the safety and emergency management. I wanted to learn what facilities goes through from the nitty gritty, turning the wrench per se. So it's really been awesome so far.
Do you have, as you, excuse me, just as you look at kind of your progression, do you look at it as kind of open book, a lot of opportunity within healthcare, or do you want to stay on the safety security track, or you want to go facilities? Have you thought that far, or what are you thinking as far as next steps? Are you just happy where you are and want to learn as much as you can in a big organization?
That's in the next couple of years, I really want to just hone in on all of my knowledge for fire and life safety. I feel that is my main passion. So I feel it's going to live within the environment of care and the life safety aspect, from whether that be in the safety department or the facilities. Owning both of those would be my end goal, and being a leader for my peers. As the term millennials, and we move into the next generation, really applying how we can automate and accomplish more while also improving our processes, not losing anything. I don't want to reinvent the wheel, but I want to fine tune and automate what I can so that way we can achieve more, because I feel that's something that healthcare really needs right now.
If you like this video, please like and subscribe to the network. And more importantly, share it with your colleagues in the healthcare industry. Together, we can solve the aging crisis that's impacting all of us.
I was looking through last time we talked, and Brittany, you talked about, it was a great quote. You talked about the M word, millennial, and that was a trigger for you when people, so everybody's a millennial here, right? Except me, I'm not, I'm Gen X, but I don't matter. But how the perception of millennials and either no work ethic or not engaged, what have you, like 18 months later, 20 months later, as millennials get older, right? We all get older. Has that perception in the workplace changed, you feel, or do you think that's kind of tagging along as you guys go through your career? Any change in that perception of millennial? Brittany, I'll go to you.
I was going to say, I can speak personally. I have to say that since we spoke last, I can probably count on my hands how many times that M word has actually been used and triggered me. I was actually talking to my husband about this last night, about how like this is going to come up, and we were talking about it, and I said, you know what, I just realized, my new director, and Claire, you may interact with my new vice president because he was my director. Now he's our enterprise vice president. So my new director locally here in the Midwest is actually the same age as me. And it wasn't until last night that I fully realized, I was like, oh, this is the first time I actually have a director who I can relate to in a lot more ways, professionally, in regards to professional growth. So it was something that I kind of didn't realize till last night, even though he's been my director for 6 months. Mm-hmm. And as I think about it, and I think about my team, when I think about who's on my team is mostly millennials now. And it's something that I don't think there's as much of there's not a negative perception of millennials as much now. I think that maybe that's partially, for me personally, that's my personal growth. I will say that I had a lot more issues with some older generations within HfN&x and our professional growth there. To Logan's point, trying to not reinvent the wheel, but just be more creative with how we move forward as an organization with our personal membership group, HfN&x. So that, by the way, it's Healthcare Engineering Society of Northern Illinois, the Northern Illinois ASHE group. So there were some obstacles within that group that we've worked through over the years, and I would say there were more generational issues there than I've had in my professional career, like within my organization and with anything there. And it was just a matter of I was trying to put us on a fast path forward to keep us competitive with other organizations. And we always have this phrase of old HESNE versus new HESNE. And so trying to keep that new HESNE path forward was, I would say that would be a larger millennial obstacle I've had in the past since we've met last. But professionally, when I think about it, most of my team is in the millennial generation, or they have never had issues with us when it comes to our generational differences.
It's interesting you bring it up in the context of region, the chapter, the local chapter. I guess I can see that in a way, right? Because chapter membership is probably older. People tend, once they get involved, they stay involved, so they might hang on a little bit longer. I guess I could see where that might be. I never really thought of it in that context, though. But especially with new ideas, new technologies, you got to be more competitive to get people to join, right? Because it's a competitive world out there. Mm-hmm. Interesting perspective. The rest of you guys, let me just dial up. Any other thoughts on call it the M word and changing the scene?
So having spent the last 2+ years working for a tech company, right, which typically, there are components that attract younger folks, less rigidity in organization, more flexibility in how and where and when you do your work. I would say as far as age, I'm probably like middle to like upper half of the age group. There's a lot of folks who work at our organization who are younger than me, which, was different than my experience when I was working in healthcare facilities. So now I think it's just when millennials come up, it's because the Gen Z folks are teasing us for, our skinny jeans and our DVDs.
Is it good-natured teasing, or sometimes there's a bite of truthfulness underneath teasing?
I would say a little bit of both, probably. Yeah.
Jim or Logan, you guys are good?
I don't have much else to offer on it. I have not heard it mentioned a lot, and I do think a lot of it is just with the passing of time. The millennials are becoming more and more of the workforce, so I think they're starting to become the majority of the stakeholders at this point. If you hear anything about the gender divide, or the age divide, is usually about people who are entering the workforce now, more so than about what's actually in the workforce. But that's a whole other topic that I don't think really merits being discussed right now. But yeah. I don't hear it brought up as a point of distinction for performance, at least with regards to millennials or any of the other current generations that are the majority stakeholders in the workforce.
Yeah, Brittany, I was going to say to you, you said I think you said you could count on one hand the number of times that you've heard it in the last 20 minutes. That's not a bad thing, right? I mean, that must be lower, or you want to eliminate it altogether?
No, it's definitely lower. I remember a couple of years ago at ASHE Chapter Leadership Forum, it was literally the entire Chapter Leadership Forum was dedicated to how do we deal with millennials. And it was, for lack of a better way to say this, it was offensive. I almost walked out. Because on a national level, you're calling out millennials and calling us lazy. It was something that was kind of what sparked millennial becoming a trigger for me, was that on a national level, it was, hey, how do we deal with them? And now I definitely don't think that that's the path forward anymore. At least from what I've seen on a national level. I mean, I've been part of the Young Professionals Committee developing that Shadow a Leader program that ASHE now has. So I definitely think that on a national level, they've definitely changed their tune, and they see the millennial and younger generation as a huge asset. So I think that was an older mindset. I definitely think, that session probably took place 10 years ago at this point. Mm-hmm. And it's also weird now that I get to say I've been doing this for over 10 years. I'm in the double-digit club now.
Just wait.
Yeah, I know. And I think that may be part of the shift of how the industry views millennials, is that a lot of us are in that double-digit experience time frame now, and I think that is a huge path forward for us as a generation, and being seen more as equals. I think since seeing you in San Antonio, at that conference, and since then, 3 people who I have seen as mentors have come to me and said, you were right on things. So having, hitting that 10-year mark and having mentors that you've looked up to your whole career come up to you and say, you were right on something. And it's coming from a place of respect and, hey, I see you as an equal. That was a huge shift for me since we met last.
But I think what's interesting, when we came together in 2023, I'd met you all individually, like in different contexts. And part of the Healthcare Facilities Network, the mission of it is to publicize that the role exists. And it's very appropriate that we're all together because you're millennials, take the generation part out of it. You're succeeding in your careers and you're elevating. And it is hopefully, we're trying to attract new people into here. We're trying to attract passionate people into here. And you guys are proof that, you're passionate about what you're doing. You can rise if you want to. I mean, you guys all had these choices to make, right? You could have said no, or you could have left, but you didn't. And tangibly, 20 months later, you're all probably in positions that, I'm happy I'm here. What do you guys think? What keeps you here? You could go elsewhere, right? Nobody wants you to go elsewhere, but you could. You're skilled. I mean, if you can work in this environment, you have choices. What keeps you? What keeps you in this healthcare facilities world?
I could try to take a stab, or the first stab is, I think it's the constant need. It's that fast-paced workflow, and as long as there's an established need and value, it really brings you joy knowing that you're being impactful, and maybe someone's worst moment. A lot of times, individuals are coming to healthcare facilities because they're either seeking treatment or they may be towards the worst stage of their life, and really showing that we can be impactful at these facilities is something every day that I think about. And when I look back on some of the other opportunities I could be in, I want to make sure that what I do every day is very impactful to families. So I've had some personal experience where some of my family members have gone through some tough times, and after speaking with some of my friends and colleagues that work there, it really meant a lot that I know how hard they work at those facilities. And that's what makes me want to go in every day.
Well, Logan, just look at you. So you're in Philadelphia, right? 5 days ago, it depends when people listen to that, but you had that horrible plane crash, with 6 people dying, little child going back to Mexico. I mean, you talk about you don't know what you're going to do every day. And isn't that a horrible example, but an example nevertheless of the field you're in? Are you guys near where that accident occurred?
Yes. It's roughly 15-20 minutes drive outside the city. And I don't have the exact mile markers, but I would say 5 to 10 miles outside northeast of the city. So very, very close to a majority of our facilities.
Yeah. I mean, you never know what you're going to deal with when you walk into work any given day.
And right where our conference is. So I'll give a shout out. I know Brittany mentioned her chapter. Our chapter is the Healthcare Facility Management Network in the Delaware Valley, so HfN&x. We meet in our monthly meetings, which our last monthly meeting was yesterday, in Trevose, PA, which is very close to where that occurred at.
Like Logan has shared, working in a mission-driven organization has always been very compelling to me. But even working for a software supplier to the industry, I always tell my customers, we're located all throughout the country. Where you work, these are the places we have our babies at, we take our parents to, we have our you know what I mean? Like, we live and work in these communities, and so we take our work even more seriously. Not that other industries don't, but you just feel it a little bit more personally working in healthcare. And then likewise what Logan's saying, it's like so easy at the end of every day to think of at least one thing that you were involved with or you helped with, and you're like, that was right for that person, that helped somebody care for a patient got a comfortable space to be in, whatever it is. Like, it's super easy at the end of every day to just think of at least one thing that you can feel good about.
I actually just had a conversation about this specifically last week. So I work on the construction side now, and I work in non-acute construction. So I don't work in the hospitals; it's mostly clinics. And I had a general contractor friend just say, "Do you know how much money you could make if you came to the general contractor side?" And someone who knows me was like, "Is that really what you'd want to do, though?" And I said, "No." I said, "It's not about the money for me." I said, "My desire has always been to work for a healthcare organization because I feel like that's where I can make the best impact for the industry." So this is actually a very real conversation I just had about 2 weeks ago because a friend overheard the general contractor saying, "Do you know how much more money you could make on our side?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but that's not really where I feel my purpose is. Within a healthcare organization is where I've always envisioned myself working. It's not about, yeah, could I use the money? Oh, everybody could. Look at escalation." But just my calling has always been the healthcare organization side. I didn't specialize in healthcare construction and work in HFM as an intern to make money. Obviously to make money, but obviously not to just, that's not my main driver when it comes to where my career is going.
Yeah. And, and Jim, go to you next. That passion is kind of what comes in, right? And so when I was doing the recruiting, some of the intangibles when you talk to people, like what you said, Brittany, just you get that from talking to people, right? And I think that's what makes people who stay in are good in it. You're just passionate and you make a difference. And then there's some people who they chase the check, but then they come back because they lose that. You see that a lot there. So it wasn't the same. So I think that's what makes it unique is there really is a mission because you're helping people at the end of the day. And you don't do that in every industry.
I mean, I feel like I could echo all of what my three colleagues have said here because all of it definitely resonates with me. It hasn't happened as much lately because I think they've all realized it now, but a lot of my friends have asked, because they all have jobs that pay very well. Most of them are consultants or something like that. And they used to ask me, "Why don't you come over to our side? Because you can make a ton more money because you're very good at what you do." And they don't ask me anymore because they're all miserable at their jobs right now. So yeah, they probably make more money than me, but they don't enjoy what they do, which is why I'm here. But for me specifically and personally, I grew up in hospitals. My dad worked in healthcare. I was also in hospitals a lot, both as a patient myself, and I have a lot of family members who have unfortunately had a lot of chronic illnesses. So my goal when I went to college, I wanted to be a doctor, and it just didn't pan out for me. I have a biochemistry undergrad degree, and I lost interest in it, but realized I still wanted to do it, and I'm very good with my hands, so I just took a job as a maintenance mechanic at a hospital, and just that everything's kind of blossomed for there. But being in healthcare has never really been a question. It's just how I was going to do it was the question because the first thing I remember as a child is being in hospitals, this huge building. It was like a 1 million square foot hospital. And I just always wondered, how does this place run? How do you make this huge thing? Like most people can't maintain their houses. How do we make these gigantic buildings with thousands of people in them run? And every day I find out why and how, and it's with a lot of work. So being integral into that, and then of course delivering the care, being there for the patients. I had to visit my dad was in the hospital just the other day. He's fine, but just being there, he was in a facility I've been in many times myself, seeing what's going on, now knowing that he's being cared for and the things going on in the background. That's why I still work in healthcare, because I want to make sure those background elements, the utilities, support services side is functioning so they don't have to think about those things, because that's the way it should be. People shouldn't have to worry about if the water is being maintained properly or that the boilers aren't going to explode at any given moment. That's important stuff that needs to make sure it's happening at all times.
It's interesting. You kind of hit on we look at the employee deficit that we're all facing, right? And trying to bring new people into healthcare facilities management. You said you've been going into hospitals since you were a kid. It's kind of that conundrum, right? We all go to hospitals. It's the one thing, no matter who you are in society, we're always going to hospitals. But yet, few kids think like you, Jim. How does that run? Even adults. But if there was only some way we could capture that kind of a thought when people enter, maybe there would be more who would go in, that they know that this career even exists and that you can make a nice living out of it. So you're a younger generation, and we talk, I always ask people, what concerns you? You guys just talked about what keeps you here. As you look at it from your career, from your vantage point, not any other vantage point, are there things that concern you? And when I say concern, that you worry about relative to your career, relative to the future of healthcare facilities management, something, I guess, other than kind of like a lack of people. Obviously, that's a huge one, right? It took you guys, 10 months to fill 3 positions, Brittany. That puts a lot on a staff, in intense. But are there other things, like, as you guys, and it doesn't even have to be what worries you, what excites you as you look to the future? Because you guys got long runways in front of you. It doesn't have to be related to your career, but what are you thinking about? Are the things concern you, things that excite you? What does the future look like? Not for you, for the industry.
Things I'm excited about, but also nervous about at the same time is AI. There's going to be a lot of opportunities. I know organizations are already, using it in different ways, and there's every day. I was like just scrolling through my phone this morning, and every other article I see is about AI and what's changing, what's going on in different parts. So I think if it's leveraged properly, and that's as deep as I'll go into that, it can be very powerful and be beneficial, but it needs to be done properly with the safeguards in place. And that's where my concern comes from, is that there might not be enough safeguards as it presently stands. Other things that excite me in general is I do think at some point there's going to be a change in how healthcare is provided in this country. I just don't know what that looks like. But I feel like, as always with things, are kind of coming to a head, and I'm trying to keep this as apolitical as possible here. But at some point, something is going to come to a head. All of the previous administrations, healthcare has been one of the top 5 topics. Obviously, it can also go badly as well, depending on what the choices are made. So again, kind of excited, also not excited, because I think at some point there'll be a turning point where we go towards maybe things are more socialized in terms of how healthcare is provided. Maybe it continues to go more privatized, which is where we kind of are right now. Whether you think either of those things are good or bad is really up to interpretation, of course. But I do think at some point something's going to change with it, and we'll start moving in that direction. And what I think is important about that is hopefully whatever it is we choose to do, we do it better. Because right now, with all of the challenges we're seeing with funding, with staffing, and I'm on this side of it, with regulation and compliance, there's a lot that goes into it. And what I'm finding in my almost 15 years now in healthcare is there's a lot of buckets that are very separated from each other and how the system works. And it's very hard for any one person to really have a grasp, even as a patient, how all these things interplay and to go into what we're paying for and how these things are provided. So I know this is a very nebulous response, but I do hope that at some point we simplify and streamline the way that these things work. And that's something I'm excited about.
I think something that excites me and fears me is the cybersecurity and AI perspective. What can we automate as much as possible while still maintaining that level? Also, I think something that we've never really discussed, but it can relate, maybe Brittany, Claire can help me out with this one to involve everyone, is how can we get the care that we need in areas that are not easily accessible? I believe we talked about work-life balance, traveling in and out of cities. Although we're going into work, others are coming to try to receive that care. So how do we envision construction, moving space management, and different rural populations and urban populations to really be impactful, so that way we can utilize everything on the inside operations? That's something that I'm excited and fear at the same time. I think that will be coming into play soon.
I have to be honest, I'm not, I think I can echo a lot of what Logan and Jim said. I definitely think administrations having too much input, no matter which party they are, it's just, I think that just is worrisome to me. Especially, as a young woman and with a daughter, like it's worrisome for the future. In regards to professionally, I know, Logan, to your point, speaking of getting care in areas that there may not be any, I'm currently working on a project that's a federal grant project. I don't know the status of it, but I'm supposedly getting a federal grant to put behavioral health clinics in the South Chicagoland area. So it's become quite a passion project of mine personally / professionally, to work with the behavioral health leadership, because they also identified that the South Chicagoland area is an area where they're lacking some visibility. So it's for me, trying to get creative with how to best utilize these funds to create where we could make the most impact. So that's something that just personally, to kind of echo what you were saying, Logan, is trying to provide services that we're lacking in areas that may need them a little bit more so, or to make it easier for them to get to. We toured a site that's on a bus stop. So it's something that it's easy to get to. And it's something that we can make a larger impact just by being more strategic with where we place some of these facilities.
I'll round it out with something that I'm excited for. I do think as an industry broadly, more and more I see professionals being considered and being selected for roles that maybe, quote unquote, they're not in the traditional lockstep kind of progression for. I have a colleague who was a safety manager, and then he worked in kind of like a regulatory internal consultant role, who was selected for the facility director position at a metro hospital here in the Charlotte metro area, right? So had worked in lots of, related, relevant roles, but didn't, quote unquote, start as a maintenance mechanic, maintenance supervisor, maintenance manager to director. And I see, more of that happening, folks with maybe like a design background, being selected for positions in kind of some of these adjacent roles within their organization. So that's something I think part of it is being necessitated, right? Is, organizations have to be willing to look at folks from a variety of different backgrounds, but I think is becoming more normalized. It's less of like twisting people's arms to be like, no, really look at this candidate. I think more organizations are able to kind of connect the value and experiences faster.
That's really an interesting point there, Claire. We could do a whole show on that because I talk about that so.
All right, I know you're passionate about that.
Right? Well, no, well, and it was interesting you brought that up because, I think organizations, you said out of necessity, you almost have to go that route now, right? You can't, and you can't we don't have enough people to automatically say no if they don't fit exactly what you're looking for. You kind of have to consider all those experiences, and does somebody know them? And I'm going to tie that into AI. Jim, you brought it up. Like AI do, excuse me, either like screen people out because they don't, their resume doesn't have what's input into the AI, and you just kind of, I feel, and it's just anecdotal, I don't base it on anything. I have no data. You could probably put me on the stand and they'd laugh me off, but I don't know. I feel like there's got to be a subset of people that we're missing out on, whether it's their AI kicks them out or HR, they got a lot going on. They don't know what they're looking for in the role. And I don't mean that as a criticism. There's a lot.
Sure.
I feel that's an issue. And
it can't, well, and this is interesting because I think this applies to anything that's process driven. And something that I've been talking about when I'm reviewing survey reports is whatever system you're designing, don't create a system that's going to make you fail. I don't care if you're talking about a management plan for your safety management system. Don't set up some policy that says you're going to do this every time something happens, and it's completely you can't even do it. It's impossible from just a work hours perspective. Same thing goes for AI. And that's why I said it's the safeguards and the way it's implemented is going to be critical, because yes, if you put too many limiting factors on it, it won't provide an output that's going to be helpful to anybody who's using it. And that certainly could be the case with regards to our HR hiring processes. And something that, in my opinion, a lot of good managers and people who hire people, which I'm now in that position, is look for character, and everything else you can teach. Right? Yes, we work in a very specialized field. There are some things you have to be trained, taught, know how to do. I don't want some surgeon off the street who's never, worked on a cadaver before. I think we understand that. I don't think there's any confusion. But when it comes to management roles where you are not the hands-on person doing the role, whether it's a supervisor, manager, director, whatever, character, I think, is so much more important, because you can teach them how to click the mouse here and do all the different applications. Having the right foundation and the right subsets of interpersonal skills, I think, is so much more important. And I don't know if AI can quantify that right now. And I, again, have no data to support that position because I am not an IT person and I have no idea how AI really works. But we have to make sure that whatever the input requirements are cover all those fields so we aren't limiting out people with the correct character skills and character subsets, but they lack maybe the educational portion or something like that.
Sorry, just to echo on that, I had someone reach out to me personally to apply for a regulatory role a couple months ago. It's probably a year ago at this point. And I submitted my resume that says, I've done regulatory surveys, but I didn't specifically put the Joint Commission or DNV experience. So AI kicked me out because I didn't specifically mention the accrediting bodies in my resume. AI kicked me out as an applicant. And I was personally sought out by the account manager to apply for that role. And their system kicked me out of it because I didn't have those specific buzzwords in my resume. They're in there now for at least that application. But to your point, that it's something that I've done accreditation surveys my whole profession, but because I didn't specifically name organizations and it was a regulatory role, even though it said very specifically I had healthcare experience, and then they said they were getting applicants that were all sorts of commercial experience, but they were very much looking for that healthcare experience because I didn't have buzzwords. I don't know if it's AI or HR, but they kicked me right out.
Yeah. I've unfortunately also heard of that situation occurring, and I've heard it happen both ways, both AI doing it and HR, because HR, especially if they don't know the role specifically, they're just looking at what the criteria are set up by the organization. So it's at the end of the day, it's about the process and making sure that what you put in place isn't going to limit out what could be potentially strong candidates.
And, when we were doing, and I still love to do it, even though I'm kind of in the business development role of Craft, just talking to people about their careers and kind of resume advice. And that was one of the things, you just have to make sure those keywords are in there, because that's what HR, even if they don't know what it is. And that works the other way too, right? You might have somebody who hasn't worked in healthcare facilities, but somehow the Joint Commission is in their resume and they may sneak through where you don't. I know a lot of directors who, especially these days, they tell me, I was talking to a guy yesterday about it. He's like, I tell HR, any job I post for that reports to me, I want the resumes to come to me because I know what they should have on it. And so that you talk about a process, Jim, they kind of subvert that. Well, it's not really subversion. It's the better way to handle it because they know what they're looking for. I want to thank Logan Landis, Jim Grana, Brittany Remick, Claire Salinas. I want to just, we talked about, we kind of danced around work-life balance. Have you guys been able to keep your work-life balance as you've had elevated positions? Is it still important to you? And have you been able to keep it, Jim? I know you said part of the reason you took it now is because you can give so much, but are you guys comfortable, I guess? Forget the work-life balance. That can be everybody talks about that. Are you comfortable with how you're managing it all?
I mean, to put it simply, yeah, I would echo with a yes. With the promotion and my daughter being in daycare really helps. But my organization values that work-life balance. So on Monday, when I forgot about my daughter's 30-month appointment, and I told my boss, hey, I need to postpone this meeting because I have a doctor's appointment, it was not a problem. It's not a problem. There's a number of people on my team specifically that they are responsible for either drop off or pickup of their children. And so they have 3 to 3:30 blocked off their calendar every single day. And it's okay. That's an expectation that our organization is okay with. We know you're going to get your work done, but you still have these family obligations. And that's actually part of the 3 positions we filled. I was helping recruit one of them pretty heavily. And that was a very specific ask of this candidate. Because they have 3 young children that they are responsible for drop off or pickup. And they said, block your calendar. Just block your calendar for the half hour that you need. And that's okay. Great. So it's something that I know it's something that I have very greatly valued about the organization I'm with now.
With the improvements, or I shouldn't say improvements, but the career opportunities that I've had recently, work-life balance has always been, I believe during the first conversation I had, I was 80 or 90% that's where I wanted to be. And then the compensation was 10. I fully 100% on work-life balance now. If I have a family emergency, or any conversation, our organization at Penn puts that first. And for all my recent new roles in the interviews, the mentors and the leaders here, that was something that I brought up and was upfront and said, when these things occur, I would need this to take this position. And it's never been an issue or question, which I really appreciate.
And I am on my way to where I want to be with work-life balance. I work for a very understanding organization. I would say a component I wasn't used to prior was just the travel that's required, right? Because we work with folks all across the country. And like I said, there's a lot of value on in person. And so the travel piece is kind of what continues to throw a wrench now that I have my son. It's less exciting, less fun than it used to be, and more of a exercise in planning for me and my husband. But what everybody else says, it's so important to find an organization that's understanding of what your needs are.
Absolutely. Well, folks, thank you. I was going to say, my last question, I was going to say, no, but in 20 months, when we talk again, where will you all be? You don't need to answer that. That's a cliffhanger. Guys, thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it. Great conversation, and congratulations. Everybody's doing I feel like the dad. Everybody's doing fine. So, thank you all. This is Peter Martin for the Healthcare Facilities Network. This is Generations Roundtable Part 2. Stay tuned. 20 months, Generations Roundtable Part 3. Thank you all for watching. Have a great day.
If you want to be a guest on a future episode of the Healthcare Facilities Network, go to healthcarefacilitiesnetwork.com and let us know who you are and what you want to talk about, because together we can solve this critical aging issue.